The last thing I heard before my world collapsed was a man laughing at my worth and calling my life a failure. Not an enemy, not a stranger. A man who once swore to protect me. My name is Zoe Murphy, and for 15 years I carried the kind of betrayal that doesn't bruise the skin. It buries itself in your bones, waits in the dark, and changes the way you breathe. I thought I'd buried that night forever, until the SEAL Admiral walked in, looked me dead in the eye, and asked my rank as a joke. He had no idea who I was, or what I survived, but he was about to find out. I worked the night shift at the Old Harbor Simulation Facility, a tactical lab tucked against the SEAL base in Everett. Most people barely noticed it existed. That was why I chose it. The place smelled of machine oil and overheated wiring, and the hum of sonar simulations echoed down the metal corridors. Outside, radios crackled with quick SEAL chatter, a reminder that real operations were happening only a few walls away. Inside, though, I was just the night tech no one looked at twice. Men in uniform brushed past me without breaking stride, eyes fixed on whatever mission or ego kept them upright. I pretended it didn't matter, pretended the indifference protected me. But the truth was simpler. The less attention I drew, the safer my world stayed. When my shift ended, I drove back to the small apartment where Lily worked through her homework at the kitchen counter, legs swinging, pencil tapping in rhythm with her thoughts. 14, bright, stubborn, and still young enough to fall asleep sitting up if I came home too late. Life between us moved like a clock wound tight. Her school schedule, my rotating shifts, the quiet routines we clung to as if they could shield us from anything unpredictable. I kept my head down at work, especially around the SEALs who came through the simulation bays, young, confident, sharp-edged men whose questions always seemed designed to corner or expose someone. Being near them pressed against parts of my past I had buried so deliberately, it hurt to feel them stir. And no matter how hard I tried to hide inside the rhythm of ordinary days, a truth tugged at me with every passing month. Staying this close to the military world meant it was only a matter of time before the past stopped letting me pretend. The steady quiet I depended on began to fracture the morning a team of SEALs marched into the simulation bay for a radar diagnostic. Their boots struck the metal flooring like a warning, their frustration sharpening with every minute they spent arguing over the desynchronized feed. I kept to my corner, wiping down screens, pretending their presence didn't bother me, pretending my hands were steady. When one of them finally snapped and reached for a wrench to dismantle the module, something in me reacted before thought could interfere. My fingers slid across the auxiliary display, adjusting the offset frequency with the kind of instinct that didn't belong to the life I lived now. The radar synced instantly, the entire map blooming back into motion. Silence dropped. A SEAL straightened, eyebrows raised. "Where'd you learn that trick?" I didn't look up. I forced my hands to still, forced my heartbeat down from my throat. I couldn't let them see more than what they wanted to see, but Rivera did. She stepped forward, head tipped, studying me with a precision that felt far too close. She wasn't confrontational, just impossibly observant. "You served before, didn't you?" I denied it, too fast, too sharp, the kind of denial that answers nothing. Rivera didn't push, but she didn't need to. Her gaze lingered on me, my stance, the clipped tone I'd used without thinking, the way my attention kept drifting to the exits, all the tells I thought I'd buried deep under years of routine and silence. By the end of the shift, my nerves buzzed like live wires. I drove home through the dim streets, hoping the tightness in my chest would loosen by the time I walked through the door. Instead, I found Lily at the kitchen counter, not with homework, this time with a worn newspaper scrap in her hands. She wasn't supposed to have anything like that. I didn't even know how it resurfaced. She looked up at me, curiosity flickering in her eyes, and something inside me shifted, a tremor of fear I couldn't hide. I realized then, the quiet life I'd built wasn't cracking. It was unraveling. It happened the next day, when Lily decided to hunt for an old suitcase in the hall closet. A loose ceiling panel shifted, A metal box dropped at her feet. Before I could stop her, the lid was open, spilling a past I had spent years trying to suffocate. A scorched unit patch with the name scraped away. A medal snapped at the pin. A photo of 6 women standing before a shadowed helicopter. Dust lifting in the night wind, and a torn headline that struck like a blow. Female officer presumed dead after night operation. I felt myself go cold, rooted to the floor, while memories I'd held underwater clawed back to the surface. Lily's voice broke through the haze, soft, hesitant. "Mom, is this you? Were you actually in the military?" I closed the box, shoved it deep into a cabinet. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I kept my tone low, but Lily heard the quiver beneath it, something she had never heard from me before. I saw confusion in her face, hurt even, but I couldn't let her hold any of it. Not yet. My phone vibrated. A message from an unlisted number. "They know you're in Everett. Leave while you can." My breath punched out of me. My legs nearly buckled. 15 years of hiding, working in shadows, building a life that couldn't be traced, undone by 6 words. But the true blow was one I didn't witness. Across the facility, in the grainy glow of a surveillance room, Admiral Garrett Holt replayed the footage of my hands fixing the radar system. He slowed the frame, leaned forward, and recognition flashed across his face. He knew that movement. He knew that pattern. He knew me. And the moment he remembered, the past I fought to bury began rising like a tide I could no longer outrun. By morning, Old Harbor felt drawn tight enough to snap. Every engineer and tech had been ordered into the simulation bay for a full capability review under Admiral Garrett Holt, a presence so heavy his reputation entered the room before he did. I stayed toward the back, cloth in hand, hoping to remain a ghost among machinery and metal floors. But ghosts only survive as long as no one turns their head. While I checked a cable feed, that familiar weight settled on my shoulders. A stare, deliberate and unsettling. I looked up just enough to see Holt examining me, as if sifting through old memories. His tone carried none of the curiosity it pretended to. "Who are you? I don't recall you on the engineering roster." I kept my voice flat, unremarkable. "Just the night tech, sir." He narrowed his eyes. The kind of narrowing a man does when something doesn't add up. When the SEALs began their simulation run, Holt glanced at me again, this time with a smirk that dug under my skin. "So what rank does a night tech need to touch equipment like this?" Laughter cracked through the room. I held still, but a cold tremor rippled along my spine. That question, those exact words, had once been thrown at me hours before everything went wrong. Holt didn't recognize me yet, but my body remembered him. Then the crisis signal tone blared from the speakers, sharp enough to activate instincts I no longer claimed. Before I could stop myself, I pivoted toward the sound in a maneuver drilled deep into muscle memory. Too precise, too tactical, too familiar. Rivera noticed, Holt noticed, and in that fractured second, I knew I'd exposed a layer of myself I'd spent years burying. When the review ended, I tried to slip out quietly. Rivera followed, but on the opposite side of the hallway, I saw Holt veer into the surveillance booth with 2 officers. Through the window, he played back the radar footage from earlier in the week. He zoomed in on my hands, steady, precise, unmistakably trained, then scrolled down to the timestamp. 0:14. Zoe Murphy in frame. Recognition settled across his face like a shadow solidifying. He didn't say a word, but the air between us changed forever in that moment. I turned away before he looked up, but my chest tightened as though bracing for an impact I'd been outrunning for 15 years. Rivera waited in the hallway after my shift ended, arms crossed, expression too composed to be casual. She didn't bother softening her tone. "You're not just a tech. I saw how you moved, how you synced that radar. People don't do that unless they've commanded." I tried to deny it again, but my voice faltered. She stepped closer. "Where did you serve?" "Zoe?" The question wrapped around my ribs like wire. I moved past her, but her suspicion followed me out of the building. At home. A notification flashed on my laptop. Your civilian record is under review by Naval Command Everett. Only mine. No one else's. This wasn't routine. It was a signal, a tightening net, and I knew whose hand was pulling the threads. Later, when I drove to pick up Lily, a man in a navy jacket stood by the school gate. No name tag, no insignia. His attention never drifted from Lily. I felt my pulse spike as I redirected toward the back entrance. Lily ran into my arms, startled by the way I held her. On the windshield of my car was a folded slip of paper. Night shift techs don't stand like that. No signature, no need for one. Holt had found me. My breath thinned, the world narrowing to a single truth. Everything I'd been running from was now walking straight toward me, steady and unhurried, like a helicopter spinning up in the dark. I kept telling myself Holt's interest would stop at the staring, the questions, the quiet pressure that had begun tightening around my life. But by midday, that illusion shattered. Rivera pulled me into the technical archives with a look that sent my pulse racing. She locked the door, brought up a restricted folder on the monitor, and stepped aside so I could see the file title glowing on the screen. Night Vantage. Clearance restricted. Her voice dropped to a whisper as she opened the metadata. Someone tried to erase this, but a trace remained. There it was. In plain text. Operation Commander, Z. Murphy. Status. Presumed deceased. Classified by A. Holt. A cold wave swept through me. Holt hadn't merely reviewed my history, he had sealed it, manipulated it, and kept the lie alive for 15 years. Rivera's eyes flicked between my face and the screen, but I couldn't bring myself to confirm what she already suspected. By lunchtime, a new blow arrived. An automated alert hit my inbox with a red priority tag. Access request. Zoe M. Requester. Naval Internal Audit. Status, urgent. No group audit. No random sweep, just me. This kind of request was only used for security breaches or high-risk subjects. Holt was accelerating. The walls of my carefully built life were closing faster than I could brace against them. Later that day, as Lily and I left school, the black SUV that had been lingering nearby remained parked across the street, but the driver was new, older, sharper, with the posture of someone trained to observe without blinking. They weren't watching the school. They were watching my daughter. Lily asked why we were taking a different route home again. I couldn't answer, without my voice betraying everything. When we reached the apartment, a plain envelope sat alone in the mailbox. Inside was a torn scrap of a military report. If she surfaces again, terminate the link. In the corner was a coded mark I recognized instantly, Holt's operational signature. The message wasn't subtle. It was a threat dressed as protocol. Just before dusk, another email arrived from his office. Report to Admiral Holt's office at 1900. I had no obligation to obey. I wasn't military anymore. But the final line knocked the air out of my lungs. Bring your daughter for identity verification. Whatever this was, it had moved far beyond suspicion. It was a hunt, methodical, intentional, and I was the target. Walking into the base felt like stepping into a memory I'd spent years trying to smother. Rivera met me near the entrance, her expression sharper than I'd ever seen it. She pulled me aside, her voice low but urgent. They're setting you up, but you're not walking in there alone. Her warning hit with both comfort and dread. If Rivera was afraid, things were worse than I imagined. Inside the conference room, Holt stood before a projected display of images from Night Vantage. My unit. My past. The night everything went dark. His voice sliced through the room with a mock curiosity that made my stomach twist. I always wondered why one of you disappeared without leaving a body. The walls felt too close. He'd known for years, known and waited for me to resurface. He slid a stack of papers toward me. Confession of desertion, Class A, sign it. Zoe. Your daughter goes home safely. I pushed the papers away. No threat could make me rewrite the truth of what happened to my team, or my husband. Holt leaned in, voice barely above a breath. If they learn you commanded Night Vantage, the entire operation gets reopened. You know what that means. Regulations broken, orders altered. A withdrawal that abandoned my unit in enemy fire, and every path of blame leading back to him. He lifted his hand, and a nearby officer activated a monitor. My knees weakened when I saw Lily on the screen, alone in a restricted room, eyes wide and searching. Zoe, if you don't comply, she stays under national security hold. The room spun. This wasn't pressure. This was a declaration of war, and Holt was using my child as the opening strike. I stepped into the largest conference room on base, the overhead lights reflecting off the Navy emblem projected across the wall. Holt stood at the head of the table, stone-faced, immovable, as if he'd been waiting years for this moment. Behind the soundproof glass near the door sat Lily, small and terrified, searching my face for answers I didn't yet know how to give. One thing was clear. If I stayed silent, I would lose her. If I spoke, I would lose the life I had spent 15 years fighting to protect. Holt slid a packet toward me. Confession of desertion, Zoe Murphy. The room froze as he listed my supposed sins, vanishing, hiding, betraying my oath. Each word struck like a blow. Something inside me snapped. I lifted my eyes to his. I wasn't a deserter. I was abandoned. Shock rippled through the room. Rivera's breath caught. A young officer whispered the name of the mission that had haunted whispers for years. I drew in a steady breath. I am Major General Zoe Murphy. I commanded Night Vantage, and Holt left my team to die. Holt tried to laugh it off, claiming I had no proof, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Rivera's subtle nod told me the files were already gone, sent where he couldn't reach them. Holt grabbed his radio, shouting orders, but the doors burst open before he could finish. Men in dark suits swept inside, led by DoD investigator Harris. Admiral Holt, you are under federal investigation. Then Harris turned to me. Major General Murphy, welcome back. My knees nearly gave out. Behind the glass, Lily burst into tears. Holt's face drained of color, his empire cracking in an instant. The conference room transformed into an impromptu investigation chamber, the hum of the projector slicing through a silence so heavy it felt alive. Harris pulled up the recovered Night Vantage files, each line of text striking with the force of a blade. Rivera's work had exposed everything Holt fought to bury. There it was in black and white. The mistimed deployment order that pushed my unit into the kill zone. The unauthorized withdrawal that sealed our fate. The falsified report declaring Murphy as KIA. Then the final line. Cold, clinical, unmistakably cruel. Missing officer presumed eliminated to protect operation integrity. My breath caught. I recognized Holt's encrypted signature instantly. He hadn't just erased me, he'd sanctioned it. Holt erupted, shouting that there was no proof I had ever held command. Harris didn't bother arguing. He simply turned to me. Your authentication code. I recited it, 6 digits carved into muscle memory. The room froze as Harris confirmed it. Active rank verified. Your separation was never processed. Holt's face drained of color, collapsing in on itself as the truth snapped shut around him. Then Harris addressed the wound I'd carried deepest. We are reopening Major Daniel Murphy's case. There are signs of unlawful interference. For a moment, the room blurred. 15 years of silence cracked open, and I felt tears slip before I could stop them. When the agent stepped back, Lily ran to me, arms tight around my waist. Mom, don't disappear again. I held her close. She was the reason I survived, the reason I stood here refusing to bow to Holt. Harris gave a final nod. 2 agents seized Holt. He kicked, yelled that I was dead, that he'd wiped me clean from the system. I stepped forward, meeting his panic with calm certainty. I'm here, and I remember everything. They dragged him out. The door slammed shut, sealing the end of his reign of fear, and the beginning of my return to the world he tried to erase me from. The weeks that followed felt unreal, like stepping into daylight after years spent underground. The Department of Defense reinstated my rank, restored my honors, and issued the formal acknowledgement that should have come 15 years ago. They offered me a path back into active command, but the decision was easy in a way nothing else had been. I had sacrificed enough to the uniform. I wasn't willing to sacrifice what remained. Lily and I moved to San Diego, chasing warmth, a slower pace, and the chance to rebuild without shadows trailing us. I accepted a position teaching tactical strategy at a military academy, a role that allowed me to pass on what I'd learned without trading pieces of myself to the battlefield ever again. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the coast, Lily ran ahead of me along a narrow path toward the water, her laughter rising above the sound of the waves. Watching her, I felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Light, steady, whole. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't bracing for a threat. I wasn't hiding. I was living. I stood at the edge of the overlook, breathing in the salt air, and let the truth settle quietly into the open space around me. I disappeared once to protect my daughter. Now I had stepped back into the world for the very same reason. No battles, no orders, no fear. Just me, Zoe Murphy, finally claiming the life I had fought so long to keep alive.